right, we've officially reached that point in the offseason. It's time to recap our first 2022 mock draft. This should be fun. Welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, November 16th. Frank Stampfl joined by Scott White. And Scott, does this mean that we're doing a mock draft every week until the season starts? Because
No.
I feel like that's what we did last year.
No. That doesn't start till January, Frank, after football's over.
Okay, we've
And
got some
nobody
time.
really knows what to do with themselves. So we just start doing, no, really, it's 2 drafts a week from about late January till late March. So
Oh, yeah. And we get
everybody
crazy
gets
with it,
tired of me
too.
annoying. Like, yeah, I need to bring some intern in just to send out emails for mock drafts and set them up, because I spend so much of my time doing that in February and March that might be better spent elsewhere. But no, mock drafts are always a great resource, particularly when they're done by people you know and trust, which may include some of the names in this mock draft. Hopefully, at least Frank Stampfl and Scott White, but many others as well.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm definitely not one of the people you trust on that list, but no, it's fine. It's also especially fun when we're doing it with the 2021 rankings still in the CBS draft room. So obviously, like, things haven't updated yet on the site. It's going to take some time, but it definitely makes for drafting for next season very, very tough. So
unless you've already put together rankings. Like, I crushed these early mock drafts, Frank.
Oh, well, we're going to find out a little bit later on. We're obviously going to break it down in depth in just a bit, but did you have a major takeaway, Scott? Maybe a theme that you noticed in this first mock draft?
Major takeaway, we've been talking about it a lot throughout the offseason, just particularly in a roto draft, a 5x5 draft like we did here. Less emphasis on starting pitching than last year, closer to the traditional emphasis in starting pitching. There were still, let's see, only one went in the first round, right?
Correct.
Only one went in the first round. There were still 6 going in the second round, which maybe isn't quite all the way back to the traditional approach at starting pitching, but clearly it wasn't as people weren't selling out for them like they did last year, and they shouldn't, based on how the landscape changed last year with the deadened baseball and then the foreign substance crackdown. It went from making starting pitcher a position that stands out for its poles to one that stands out for its equator, if that makes sense.
Scott, you're talking to the wrong guy, man. I don't know anything about pop culture, movies that were made before the 90s, geography.
That's not a reference to either. So you don't know much of anything.
No, I know like a few things about fantasy baseball and fantasy football, and that's basically it. Like, I don't.
If this industry goes under, you are entirely unemployable.
I've got nothing.
What you're saying.
I was a bartender in like a local Irish pub before I kind of broke into doing this, so I guess that's always a possibility. But
I just made you worried, didn't I?
Yeah, right. Like, now I got to really start thinking about, like, just in case, what's the backup plan here? Scott isn't lying, by the way. I mean, the waiting on starting pitching and the fact that it feels deeper this year than before. And we talked about that with Nick Pollock, though. He defended, the last full season that we had. There was a bunch of pitchers that went outside the top 200 picks that were also very valuable. But Scott did not take his third starting pitcher in this mock draft until round 13. So that's a nice little tease that we'll get into.
I didn't? My third was in round 13?
I believe that is correct.
Wow.
Let me scroll through.
I didn't notice that.
Yep. I think you took 2 in the first 5 rounds, and then you didn't take your third until round 13.
Yeah. I will say, when we talked about it, when we were doing the starting pitcher recap, I said, I think I'm going to want like 7 of my top 55. In past years, I might say 4 of my top 35. That's kind of the direction I was going. So I still want to be ahead of the curve, but more in the middle portion of the position than at the high end of the position. So I wanted 7 of my top 55. I did get 7 of my top 55, but 5 of those 7 are toward the end of the top 55.
And full disclosure, Scott texted me halfway through this draft. He said, dude, I am crushing this. I was like, all right, well, let me go look at Scott's team. And then I saw his pitching, and I'm like, All right, Scott, we've got to have a talk. We'll do it on the mock draft. But
Yeah.
before we do that, let's hit on a few news and notes. We did have, I guess, our first major signing. It's not a major signing, but it's kind of a big deal. Eduardo Rodriguez signed with the Detroit Tigers, 5 years, 77 million. It could go as high as 80 million, I guess, with incentives in there. And this past season wasn't a good year on the surface for Erod. 4.74 ERA, 1.39 WHIP, but the underlying numbers were much, much better for him. 3.43 xFIP, 3.64 Sierra, 3.55 expected ERA. His 20.4% K minus walk rate was tied for 15th among starting pitchers with at least 150 innings pitched. That was tied with Lance Lynn and Jose Barrios. So that's pretty good company to be a part of. Now he gets a better park, much better division to pitch in. I'm not saying he needs to be ranked inside the top 50 starting pitchers, Scott, but I'm kind of excited about this move for Erod.
Honestly, I think I don't think it matters much. It can only help. It can only help to the extent that, Fenway Park is traditionally considered a tough place for left-handers. Over his career, Eduardo Rodriguez had pretty even splits home and away, but he wasn't very good at Fenway Park this past year. And, Comerica is just generally considered a better place to pitch. Better division, as you mentioned, division that isn't full of hitters parks. That's good. But ultimately, Eduardo Rodriguez's 2022 will come down to how much of a fluke his 2021 is. And you pointed it out, the disparity between his ERA and all his ERA estimators, the xFIP, the xERA, the FIP, the Sierra. Those definitely say Eduardo Rodriguez was a different pitcher than the ERA suggested he was. And they say he was pretty much the Eduardo Rodriguez we've known throughout his career, who, is more like a number 3 guy in fantasy. He doesn't have ace potential, but he'll give you more than a strikeout per inning with a not terrible ERA, not terrible WHIP, eat a lot of innings, win a lot of games potentially. Number 3 guy in fantasy. And the Tigers look like they're going to be contenders this past year. They went from being 53 games out of first place, I think it was, in 2019, something ridiculous, to nearly a 500 winning percentage last year. And they're going to debut Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green probably at some point this year, and now they got a little more rotation depth. So, just everything points to Eduardo Rodriguez's 4.74 ERA being a fluke. If that's the case, I'm not sure it really mattered where he went. He would be a lot better. And I have him outside of my top 60 actually, but I think he's a pretty good value there.
Oh, come on, Scott. Let's bump this guy up a little bit. You're right about the Tigers, by the way. And we talked about this towards the end of the season. They had 47 wins back in 2019, their last full season. This past season, 77 wins, a 30 win improvement with AJ Hinch here as the manager. They have young players coming. And I think as soon as next year, they could be in the mix for a wild card in the American League. So much improved team. And to a much lesser extent than Aaron Nola, Eduardo Rodriguez kind of has the Aaron Nola thing going on, where Nola was really, really unlucky this past season. Same thing happened with Eduardo Rodriguez, far and away the highest BABIP of his career. So I'm kind of excited about this move for Erod. I'll be looking to draft him as, a late-ish starting pitcher, maybe someone I stash on the end of my bench there. Manny Pena. Big news, Scott. Signs with your Atlanta Braves. 2 years, $8 million. Not really much to talk about there, but I'll just run through.
Bringing up Manny Pena on a fantasy baseball podcast.
We were talking beforehand. I was like, I wouldn't mind if the Yankees sign him. Let's get Gary Sanchez out of here. I'm just tired of Gary Sanchez. Just run through a few more things here. Chris Taylor declined his qualifying offer, and he's now a free agent. The Mariners will begin the 2022 season with Ty France as their starting first baseman. Austin Hayes underwent a procedure earlier in the offseason to repair his core, but is expected to be ready for spring training without any restrictions. We did have the Rookies of the Year announced. So in the National League, we had Jonathan India. He won the award. And in the American League, Randy Arozarena. So shout out to those guys. Congratulations to them. I think this could matter, Scott. The Diamondbacks hired Brent Strom as their pitching coach. And previously with the Houston Astros, did great work. I don't know if it was all on him, but it seemed like whoever came to the Houston Astros from a previous organization usually got turned around pretty well. I mean, Garrett Cole, Charlie Morton come to mind. Justin Verlander basically revitalized his career. So the Diamondbacks need all the help they could get. Is this
Yeah.
something that will matter to you at all?
Probably not, because it's hard to tell. Other than Zach Allen, obviously, maybe he can help get him back on track. Madison Bumgarner, I'm less confident in that. And was it so much Brett Strom himself responsible for those turnarounds, or was it really the organizational machine, and he was just a conduit in that machine? I kind of feel like that's more likely, which isn't to say Brent Strom isn't a noteworthy pitching coach. He's in his 70s. He was expected to retire because the Diamondbacks are his local team. He decided to join up with them for now, at least. But yeah, it's really difficult to pinpoint a pitcher on that team and say, oh, maybe Brent Strom can straighten him out.
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll through some prospects here. I know
They got some prospects. They don't
some
have any like
prospects.
high-end pitching prospects. They have some borderline top 100 guys. But not one that I think really stands out above the others.
I think Dre Jameson, right? That's the name that stands out to me, that he was like really good in the minors this year, but kind of a smaller frame.
Yeah, they had a few guys like that, but that's one. Yeah.
That's a name to pay attention to. So we'll see if it matters at all. The Mets are finalizing a deal with Billy Epler to make him their general manager. So good luck to you, Billy Epler. Yikes. Arizona Fall Stars game. Marlins outfield prospect JJ Bleday, 2 for 3 with a home run. He took home the MVP honors. He had a pretty awful 2021, but he is crushing it right now in the Arizona Fall League. All right, let's get into it. Our first offseason mock draft 2022, 12 teams, 5x5 rotisserie, 23 roster spots. You start 2 catchers, a middle infielder, a corner infielder, 5 outfielders, and 9 pitchers, whatever combination of starting pitchers and relief pitchers as you want. It's the classic 5x5 categories that we're used to talking about. And I will preface this, Scott, with our 2022 rankings. I mentioned they're not in the CBS draft room yet. Also, I did this draft on my phone while eating birthday cake with my family last week. So
when I was texting you, I was interrupting family time. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it was a complete mess, Scott, because I'm on my phone. I'm trying to draft. I'm trying to like talk to people. I'm trying not to be rude. I told them, I'm like, this is my own fault because I double booked. I was actually excited.
You're the one who pushed to do it this night.
I know. Like, how did I forget it was my own birthday?
I don't know.
I don't know either. So yeah, basically, I don't like my team very much, but we'll talk about it. The people who participated in this draft, the first overall pick, our buddy Chris Clegg from Fantrax, who we had on recently, then Mike Gianella, Jake Weiner, RJ White, our boss, Raymond Atherton, Chris Mitchell, Tim McLeod. I had the 8th overall pick, Jesse Roche from Baseball Prospectus. He was 9th overall. Scott, you had the 10th pick. We had Eric Cross from Fantrax at 11, and then Nick Mamikos at 12th overall. And I'm going to do something fun here. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to pull up the draft board so you can watch along here, youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. Please subscribe if you haven't before. I'll also throw the draft results in the podcast description for those that are listening. If you want to follow along and pull up the draft results on your phone or however you're listening, computer, whatever it might be, I think that'll be fun. So you can follow along here. So let's just start with the first 6 picks or so. We'll go 6 picks at a time usually and talk it out. But the first half of the first round's got Trey Turner, number 1. Then we had Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis, Vladimir Guerrero, Shohei Ohtani, and Mike Trout. And I really don't have an issue with anything here. I mean, Mike Trout's probably the only pick I wouldn't have made, and I've talked about that before. You know, I think in 5x5 roto, lack of steals, he's probably more of a late first round pick, maybe early second round pick, but this all seems pretty standard so far.
Well, I guess. I mean, it is appearing to be the case that the consensus number 1 overall pick, at least in roto leagues, is Trey Turner. This is disappointing to me because I don't think Trey Turner is worthy of the number 1 overall pick. I understand why it's happening. A lot of like transcendent type talents like Fernando Tatis, of course, or Ronald Acuna, even like a Jacob deGrom, who could potentially be considered number 1 overall, if not for the fact that they have major injury concerns heading into the new year. Now, personally, I think Fernando Tatis's is kind of overblown. He was dealing with it all of this past season and was still amazing. The shoulder, I suspect an offseason of rest and rehabilitation can only improve the situation. Maybe that's looking at it with rose-colored glasses, but I think it seems, to me, it seems practical. If Trey Turner is going to be the consensus number 1 overall pick, like this is not the year to have the number 1 overall pick, I would say, because I don't really think he stands out from 6 others who could potentially go in that spot. I would just take Tatis myself if I had the first overall pick. But if you're thinking in terms of like Kentucky Derby style draft order where everybody picks where they pick, I don't know that number 1 is a spot that should be a high priority when you're determining when you're selecting your draft spot.
I agree with that wholeheartedly too. KDS, by the way, Kentucky Derby style. It's something used often on the NFBC. I think a few other places use it as well. But yeah, it's where you could basically choose the order of the draft picks that you want. So you rearrange all the numbers, whatever it might be. But I agree with you, Scott. I think so. We'll keep moving on here. Number 7 was Bo Bichette. Number 8, Jose Ramirez fell to me, who I think that there's a very clear top 7 picks in 5x5 Roto this year, Scott, unless something changes. But you basically take Mike Trout out and you have that group of Turner, Soto, Tatis, Vlad, Ohtani, Bo Bichette, Jose Ramirez. Totally fine with any of them. Like if you told me you wanted to take Jose Ramirez first overall, I don't think it's completely crazy. I still prefer Trey Turner or Fernando Tatis, but I think that top 7 is very clear in whatever order you like them. So yeah, if you just want to take the last of that group, if you want to take the 6th or 7th pick and get a Bo Bichette or Jose Ramirez, I have no problem. I think it's a very clear top 7 group.
I mostly agree with you, but I would make one swap in that top 7. I would have Bryce Harper in and Bo Bichette out. I actually have Bo Bichette 9th. I have Mike Trout 8th. So, I would put Bichette behind Trout as happened in this draft, but I would also have Harper in there instead.
I will point out to you, by the way, Scott, we do have some NFBC ADP that's rolling in. There's some drafts that are already being conducted. There's 5 drafts that have already taken place. And Fernando Tatis has been the number 1 pick in all of them. So
that is NFBC where you're encouraged to take bigger swings.
Sure.
Because you have to beat thousands of other teams as opposed to just 11.
Yeah.
So worth pointing out, but yeah, that's I like to see that.
All right. So after I took Jose Ramirez 8th overall, then we saw Ronald Acuna. And I mentioned there's 5 drafts that have already taken place. And his range is between 4 and 19. So no consensus here. I think it's going to be all over the place and it's going to change based on the news that we get in the offseason. And obviously there's a lot of time for things to change. So
but I did move him down. In case you guys didn't catch this podcast, I think the one Chris Clegg was on.
Yeah.
I was originally stumping for Acuna to go 2nd overall until we learned at some point in October that he himself is only aiming for May. So if he's not aiming to make it back for opening day, then who the heck is aiming for him to do that? So I now have Acuna 18th overall. I don't have him even in my first round, even though he happened to go in the first round in this mock.
All right, let's finish out the first round. We had Bryce Harper go 10th overall to you, Scott, and then we had Kyle Tucker, which I'm actually totally fine with. If you wanted to extend that top 7 to 9 and include Bryce Harper and Kyle Tucker in there, I have absolutely no issue with that. And we finally see our first starting pitcher off the board with Garrett Cole at pick 12 overall. And based on
you're taking Tucker ahead of Trout.
Yes, in Roto, yeah.
Okay.
I still look. I think Tucker's an awesome player. He's probably going to chip in 12 to 15 steals, and even with that Astros offense, he's going to give you awesome counting stats, runs, RBI, good batting average. And I'm just kind of worried about the injuries the past couple of years for Trout. So maybe it's overblown. If I'm sure you probably still like Trout as a mid first round pick. I wouldn't. I don't think I could really beat up on anybody for wanting to do that. It's just I think it's personal preference. Garrett Cole, by the way, I mentioned 12th overall. Last year there were 3 starting pitchers drafted in the first round according to Fantasy Pros ADP. So far in this first draft, only 1. But you took Bryce Harper at 10, Scott, and
Mhm.
Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, I was happy to get him. Like I said, he is in my top 7. He will contribute some steals. I think he's one of the better bets for, like, a big home run total as opposed to just a pretty good home run total, among this group. And, yeah, I mean, he feels I feel less confident taking Harper in the first round as I have probably since his MVP season.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. And I think the Statcast data actually supports him maybe even being better than his MVP season. I know at some point it was like that,
Yeah,
but
it's similar.
yeah. Let's move on to the second
And the
round.
same was true last year too, which is part of only 60 games, but still.
Yeah. The second round, Freddie Freeman goes 13th overall. Then we see Corbin Burns, our SP2 overall here drafted. And then 15th overall, Scott, you take Mookie Betts. You start your draft with Harper and Betts. I think that's great. You get two outfielders out of the way, and both are going to contribute some level of power and speed. They're not they're not going to hurt your batting average. So I think it's a great start.
I mean, I don't even recognize what I'm doing here because not only have I not taken a starting pitcher yet, but I've taken 2 outfielders to begin my draft. I feel like typically I'm the guy defending why I don't have any outfielders yet in round 9, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah, definitely a change of pace than where we were at last year for sure. Jacob DeGrom goes 16th overall. He was the third starting pitcher drafted off the board, and he went to Jesse Roche, who took both Jacob DeGrom and Ronald Acuna. So spicy, living on the edge, Jesse. I was about to say I like it, but it's pretty risky. It's pretty scary.
I
So
mean, if we still had hope of Acuna being back for opening day, I think I could get behind it
yeah,
as, you know, I mean, potentially he got the best hitter and best pitcher in fantasy with his first 2 picks. But we know Acuna is not going to be the best hitter in fantasy because he's going to miss at least a month of the season. At least, that's the way it appears right now.
I took Luis Robert 17th overall, and I started my draft with Jose Ramirez and Luis Robert, and I took him over Rafael Devers, Ozzy Albies, and a bunch of other starting pitchers: Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler, Brandon Woodruff, Zach Wheeler. What do you think, Scott? Is this too early for Luis Robert?
I have him going a little later in round 2, but no, I don't think it's too early. I think it's perfectly defensible. If you take his stats at face value, okay, don't take his stats at face value because the batting average was, what was it, 350? But you give him just a, you know, 290 to 300 batting average and take everything else at face value, then I think I don't think he's a reach at this point. It's just basing a lot on a fairly small sample from an inexperienced player who saw a big drop in strikeout rate. Can he sustain that and keep the gains? I hope so, but uh, you're more committed to him doing that by taking him in early in round 2 as opposed to late in round 2.
After Luis Robert, we see Rafael Devers go, Ozzy Albies, and then we get this run of starting pitchers: Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler, Yordan Alvarez is mixed in there, and then Brandon Woodruff and Zach Wheeler. So 4 of the last 5 picks of round 2 starting pitchers. And yeah, I think once you get up to that Luis Robert level, I think I wouldn't mind all those pitchers going in the mid to late second round. I think it's a perfectly fine place for all of them to go. Was there anything there that stood out to you, Scott? I feel like it makes sense for all those pitchers to go in that range.
I agree. In fact, the first 2 rounds are comprised of the players I expect to go in the first 2 rounds. I think the only exception is Ozzy Albies went in round 2 instead of Shane Bieber. I would take Bieber in round 2 and bump Ozzy Albies to round 3. And Albies went in the middle of round 2. So, um, I guess that's the one exception to the first 24 players taken in this mock versus the first 24 I would take. Obviously, the order of the names is different, but just in terms of who the players are, pretty much on point.
All right, let's move on to the third round. We see Manny Machado and Starling Marte start off this round. So that means Chris Clegg started his team: Trey Turner, Zach Wheeler, Manny Machado, which I like that quite a bit. You knock out third base too. You don't have to worry about that position because it's, one of the most scarce this season. And then I believe it was Mike Gianella who had the second overall pick. Yeah. So Mike Gianella starts his team with Juan Soto, Brandon Woodruff, Starling Marte, and I kind of like it. I mean, I think if you are in that back end of round two, or you have an early first round pick, if you could start with two hitters and one pitcher, just get that anchor to your staff, and then maybe you load up in the middle rounds. I like this start quite a bit, Scott. I feel like the early third round hitters are really, really good, specifically in 5x5 roto. Do you agree?
I Yeah, I think it's fine. If Juan Soto continues down his power trend that he's shown so far, like he's he's among the rounders, doesn't quite measure up in the home run category to this point. Which isn't to say he's not a power hitter. You just got big home run hitters going in the first round by and large, and he's not quite one of them. So if he doesn't improve in that regard, and then you invest your third pick in Starling Marte, who's might not even give you 20 home runs, then you're having to make up ground in the home run category, I would say. And I'm that's not me really faulting the Juan Soto pick at second overall. I think that's perfectly fine. Obviously, he does a lot of other things well. But Starling Marte in round 3, I rank him at about this point. I don't want to have to be the guy who gets who really sells out for stolen bases with an early pick and at the expense of other categories, because it's, power does so much more for a hitter's overall output than steals does.
Yeah, because every time you hit a home run, you obviously get a hit, which goes towards your batting average. You get a run, you get an RBI, and obviously you get the home run. So I get what you're saying, but I do think that if you're going to sacrifice power in your first 3 or 4 picks, you have to get someone who either excels in batting average or steals or both.
Yeah.
And Juan Soto, I think we could all say confidently, he's going to hit over 300 as long as he's healthy.
Yeah.
Starling Marte could hit 280 plus with, 30, 35 steals. So
he's definitely going to benefit the batting average as well. Yeah.
So if you're going to sacrifice power, you just have to make sure that you're covering batting average or speed.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what those players do. Number 27 in this draft was Shane Bieber. He was the 8th starting pitcher off the board. Then we see Cedric Mullins, 28th overall. That's right. If you were wondering where he might get drafted this year, it seems like he's going to be a 3rd round pick. Marcus Semien goes 1 pick later. And then Francisco Lindor, Scott, 30th overall. His early NFBC ADP, again, only 5 drafts done, so it's a small sample size, but his ADP there is 49.2. Either way, I thought that we would get a better discount. I don't know if this is, where it's going to land. Ultimately, he's probably going to be more of like a 4th or 5th round pick, but even there, towards the end of the season, I talked about how I might be in on Lindor, but I thought we were going to get more of a discount, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, time will tell if that holds. I have Francisco Lindor ranked 87th. So, yeah, I will not have much Lindor either if he's going to be a third. I don't think he's going to be a 3rd rounder, but even if he's going to be like a 4th or 5th rounder.
Yeah.
For this draft specifically, I think him going in the middle of round 3, was a testament to what you were pointing out, that the draft room rankings still show what they were heading into 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody is working off their own personalized rankings yet. It's we're dead in the middle of fantasy football season.
Yeah. So some wacky things are going to happen, right? And again, like, we're not doing this to call out people's draft picks. Like,
no,
we realize, it's going to be the first couple of mock drafts we do, they're going to be weird. And even some of the picks I made myself were very weird. So again, just to preface everything there.
Marcus Semien, I actually got it wrong earlier when I said there was only the 24 players with the top 24 were the 24 I would take in the first 2 rounds. With that one exception. There's actually another exception. I would not take Jordan Alvarez in round 2. I would take Marcus Semien instead.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If you swap them in this draft, I think that probably looks a little bit better from a 5x5 roto perspective. Matt Olson goes 31st overall. Pete Alonso went in round 6. I talked about this in our first base recap. If we're getting a 3-round discount on Pete Alonso versus Matt Olson, I'll take that every day of the week. And then Sandy Alcantara, 32nd overall, maybe a little bit early, but I took him here. He was the SP 9 off the board. And so I start my team, Scott, Jose Ramirez, Luis Robert, my first starting pitcher here with Alcantara. It's probably a little bit unproven. But I was going to ask you, would you like that start more? Or if I took Max Scherzer in round 2 and say I took a hitter like Xander Bogaerts here, right? So Ramirez, Robert, Sandy versus Ramirez, Scherzer, Bogaerts. Which three would you like better?
I don't have a strong preference. I think maybe Scherzer in round 2 and then Bogarts in round 3, especially since you already have a healthy number of steals in round 1 with Jose Ramirez.
Darn it.
But I mean, the way you did it with Robert in round 2 and Alcantara in round 3, that's the higher upside play. So, I don't have a huge preference for either, to be honest.
Wander Franco goes 33rd overall, in case you were wondering where he might wind up in ADP. NFBC ADP to this point, 45.8. So maybe, late 3rd, 4th round pick. That's where we might settle in for Wander Franco. Scott, you take Austin Riley, 34th overall. You start with 3 hitters in your draft. Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts, Austin Riley. Let's just round out round 3, and then you could talk about it. Julio Urias goes 35th overall. He's the 10th starting pitcher off the board. And then Trevor Story, 36th overall. Scotty, no pitchers, 3 rounds.
I know. And I surprised myself by taking Austin Riley as early as round 3, but now that I've put together my third base rankings and just how quickly I become uncomfortable at the position, I just really didn't want to be in a spot where I had to hold my nose and take a third baseman. So, to me, the drop-off is after Nolan Arenado, at least for this format. It looks a little better in points leagues because you have some high walk guys at third base. But for this format, the big drop-off is after Nolan Arenado, who is my 5th ranked third baseman. Austin Riley's my 4th ranked third baseman. Nolan Arenado didn't go until round 6. So if I had known I could get Arenado in round 6, maybe I don't take Riley at the end of round 3 here. Maybe I take... I wouldn't have taken my first starting pitcher because my top ranked starting pitcher, Robbie Ray, at the point I took Austin Riley here late in round 3, I ended up getting early in round 4.
Right.
So I don't know what I would have done instead. Maybe I would have taken Robbie Ray and then just taken a second pitcher in round 4. I don't know.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's part of the reason why I took Alcantara too, because I didn't really love any of the hitters available at the end of the 3rd, Wander Franco, Austin Riley, Trevor Story. And then to start round 4, we had Whit Merrifield, Xander Bogaerts. They're fine, but I don't know. There was no one that was really screaming. So I was like, all right,
I feel like, and maybe it actually begins late in round 3, but the way I worded it in the write-up for the draft is that basically round 4 is like 3-4 rounds long. Like round 4 to round 7. I feel like you could mix that up in 1,000 different ways and it wouldn't look so crazy,
Yeah. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about round 4. We'll try to get to as many of these rounds as possible, and then we'll tell you how our teams turned out ultimately at the end of the draft. We'll take a quick break right now. We'll be back here on Fantasy Baseball Today. All right, so let's jump into that 4th round. I already mentioned some of these picks. Whit Merrifield goes 37th overall, then Xander Bogaerts. Scott, you take Robbie Ray. He was the SP 11 off the board. He was your first starting pitcher. Salvador Perez, the first catcher off the board, 40th overall. And then I took Teoscar Hernandez, which surprised myself a little bit. I really debated Hernandez versus Aaron Judge here. I think it's kind of like a coin flip. You want a few more home runs. I think you go with Judge, a few more steals, you go with Teoscar. But at this point, I'm like you. I only have one pitcher through my first 4 picks, and I have Jose Ramirez, Luis Robert, Sandy Alcantara, and Teoscar Hernandez. So a little bit of power and speed from everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looks pretty good to me.
All right, let's keep moving on here. Freddie Peralta, the 12th starting pitcher off the board at pick 42. Aaron Nola, SP 13, no discount. You thought you were going to get a discount on Aaron Nola. It's not happening. People still like Aaron Nola quite a bit. Then we see Lucas Giolito as the 14th starting pitcher off the board at pick 44. A lot of pitchers here. Lance Lynn, Chris Sale, and then we get Alex Bregman at pick 47 and Aaron Judge at pick 48. I thought the Judge pick was really strong to get him at the end of round 4. Alex Bregman seems a little bit too early, Scott.
Well, yeah, I have Arenado ranked higher, and Arenado doesn't go until round 6, as I mentioned. So seeing Bregman in round 4, I don't even think I could get behind that in a points league. And I've long been a Bregman backer, so I'm surprised there could be anyone on earth who likes Bregman more than I do. But maybe Mike Gianella does. Yeah, I just don't see him. I just don't see him. I can't imagine him ever hitting 40 home runs again like he did in 2019. And while I wouldn't take 30 homer season off the table, I would say that shouldn't be the expectation either, that he's probably more like a 25 homer guy with excellent plate discipline and probably a pretty good batting average, but more of a points league specialist going forward.
All right, let's move on to the 5th round here. And there's a lot of interesting starting pitchers that go in this late 4th, early 5th round. If you start off with 2 hitters and then you wanted to double tap starting pitcher, I don't think that's a bad strategy here, or 3 hitters and then take 2 pitchers in a row. But starting the 5th round, we had Jack Flaherty and then Kevin Gausman. We see Corey Seager and Tim Anderson go back-to-back 51st and 52nd. Both of those seem like great values. Christian Yelich, we'll come back to that in a second. He went 53rd overall. And then Luis Castillo as the 19th starting pitcher off the board. Again, like I think these are all fine values in this part of the draft. Scott, Christian Yelich, his early NFBC ADP is 96. He goes 53rd overall. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of winds up somewhere in the middle. Maybe he 75, 80, somewhere like that. But 5th round seems a little early for him.
Yeah, it does. Again, I can't help but wonder if that would have happened if the rankings in the draft room were updated, because you see later in this round Byron Buxton go. Eloy Jimenez doesn't go until the next round. George Springer doesn't go until the next round. Like, I just don't really see a justification for taking Christian Yelich over any of those outfielders, even if you're an optimist. I mean, yeah, that's giving up talent that I think the consensus is much higher on. I have Yelich as only the 100th player in my rankings heading into next season.
And even if you're optimistic about Christian Yelich, just playing the value game, just knowing that you can get him 2 rounds later, definitely at least 1 round later. But I mean, you could probably get him 2, maybe even 3 rounds later. And just knowing that, be aggressive on where that he's actually going to be drafted, which I guess we don't know as of now. But let's move on to the 55th pick in this draft. Will Smith, the 2nd catcher off the board. I know Tim McLeod loves him. It seems like he drafts Will Smith every single year that we do these mock drafts. 56th overall, I take Byron Buxton. But again, I was drafting on my phone. I didn't realize I was on the clock. And so you click on a player's name. The same button to add them to your queue once you're on the clock is to draft the player. So I wasn't going to draft Buxton yet. I was trying to add him to my queue. I was actually going to select Charlie Morton, but it's fine. Like I think this is an okay range for Byron Buxton, and I get my 3rd outfielder already. Another one, power, speed. His early ADP is 70.8 over at the NFBC, and if that's the case, I think that I'm going to have a lot of Byron Buxton this year. Liam Hendricks, the first closer off the board, 57th overall. Scott, you cheater! You took Charlie Morton from me. You get him as the.
If you told me when it would happen, I would have backed it out and let you take Morton. But you told me after I took Morton.
It took me a couple of seconds to realize what happened, and then a couple of picks already happened. So I was like, "All right, whatever, it's fine."
I was sweating that pick too, because Morton. I only had Robbie Ray at this point, and Robbie Ray isn't the most confident. Not somebody you can pick with a ton of confidence anyway, right? Just given his history. I think it was fine where I took him, but that's kind of a shaky number 1, obviously. I feel like Charlie Morton was the last pitcher of his tier, the last pitcher who I felt at least pretty confident could deliver true ace numbers. And
Yeah.
so I
Same.
was sweating that pick. I was fearing what my number 2 would look like if I didn't take Morton there. It sounds like you were thinking the same thing.
Yeah, basically. So through 5 rounds, you have Bryce Harper, you have Mookie Betts, Austin Riley, Robbie Ray, Charlie Morton, which looks pretty good to me. What happened if I did take Charlie Morton, Scott? Who would you have taken?
This was a few days ago, so let me try and put myself back in that mindset. I don't think I would have taken a pitcher. I think I would have taken George Springer.
Okay.
Or wait, no, I probably would I probably would have taken who I took with my next pick because I opted for Jose Altuve early in round 6 over George Springer. So I probably would have taken Altuve earlier. And then
Yep, that
maybe taken Altuve at the end of round 5 and then Springer at the beginning of round 6.
Ooh, I would have really liked to see what your pitching turned out to be if you actually did that. Josh Hader, by the way, goes 59th overall. He was the second closer off the board, which makes sense. And then Randy Arozarena to round out the 5th round, which seems very fair in Roto, a 2020 candidate again here in 2022. Let's move on to the 6th round of the draft and roll along here for those watching us on YouTube. And starting this round, we had Max Fried. He was the SP21 off the board. Eloy Jimenez, I thought that was really good value. Scott, you take Jose Altuve, 63rd overall. So you have 4 hitters and 2 starting pitchers with your first 6 picks. Pete Alonso, 64th overall. I absolutely love this pick. And then I did the same thing in round 6. I made the same mistake. I tried to add Ketel Marte to my queue, and I wasn't paying attention. But I actually don't mind this pick. Second base, outfield eligibility, provide some batting average. But yeah, I took Ketel Marte. So through 6 picks, I have 1 starting pitcher, just Sandy Alcantara, which is probably not enough. I don't know that I would recommend doing that. And then Jose Abreu goes 66th overall. What do you think, Scott? Ketel Marte, does this range make sense? 2 picks after Jose Altuve?
So we're at pick 65 overall. Just trying to see where I have Ketel Marte ranked. I have Ketel Marte ranked 64th. So
all right,
about
so
about where I say to take him. Now, some that I rank ahead of Ketel Marte, I don't think have gone off the board yet, but let's not be so nitpicky. The point is, your 2 botched picks, Ketel Marte in round 6 and Byron Buxton in round 5, I think were more or less appropriate.
All right, very nice. All right, let's get to the next picks here. 67th overall, Blake Snell as the SP22 off the board. Then we see Adalberto Mondesi. Some people might be wondering, all right, where does Mondesi go this year? So he winds up in the middle of round 6. His early NFBC ADP is 45.8. So this is pretty good value. This is more than 20 picks past that. Alek Manoah, SP23 off the board. And then George Springer, Nolan Arenado, and JT Realmuto. Realmuto, the 3rd catcher off the board, last pick of round 6. Scott, I think Springer was probably the steal of the draft. I love this pick. If I realized myself that he was there, I would have taken him over Ketel Marte, and that would have given me, I guess, 4 outfielders with my first 6 picks, which isn't the smartest thing to do, but it just seems like he was the best player available in this round.
Yeah, I think it's the best pick up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it in the outfield recap. I think Springer, Aaron Judge, and Yordan Alvarez, the projected outcome for all 3 is, I think, very similar. Maybe Springer has the lowest ceiling of the 3, but not by much. Maybe he has the most injury risk of the 3, but that's pretty close too. So to see him go this much later, I mean, Yordan Alvarez went in round 2. Your Springer's going in round 6. Again, it was between Altuve and Springer for me early in round 6. And I ultimately decided to go with the infielder because when in doubt, that's usually what I do. Infielder over outfielder. But it was a very close call. And I mean, look at the last 3 picks in this round: Springer, Arenado, Realmuto. I feel like any of those hitters here at the end of round 6, if they went in the middle of round 4, nobody really bat an eye at it. So that's kind of what I was getting at earlier.
Yeah, and I think you could say that about some of the players who went in the 7th round as well, which is the point that you're getting at. Nick Castellanos, 73rd overall, could be a steal. Let's see where he winds up in free agency. Yeah, obviously had drastic home road splits in Cincinnati this past season. Paul Goldschmidt goes 74th overall. He's someone that I was looking at in the 6th round as well, along with George Springer and Ketel Marte. Logan Webb is the SP24 off the board. He goes 75th overall. Javier Baez in Roto, 25 homers, double-digit steals. I think it's a very fair value on him. Cody Bellinger. Now, this is an interesting one. Scott, 77th overall. The early NFBC ADP is 81.2. Is this enough of a discount for you to maybe jump back in on Bellinger? Let's say he kind of winds up as a 7th-round pick here in 12-team leagues.
I like it more than the Yelich pick. I think the same guy picked both. Yeah.
I think you're right.
Yelich in round 5 versus Bellinger in round 7. First of all, I prefer Bellinger outright between the two. This is what, the 87th pick? Or no, the 77th pick.
77, yep.
So it's still like a round early for me. I have him 94th, Bellinger, but it's not egregious.
All right. Then we see Brandon Lau goes 78th overall. Jose Barrios as the SP25 off the board. And then I take Frankie Montas at 80th overall. He's my SP2 with Sandy Alcantara. Definitely not comfortable with that. Sounds like Frankie Montas could be pitching somewhere else next season too, because the Oakland A's are looking to fire sale, trade everyone away. So we'll see. We'll see where Frankie Montas winds up next year. Tyler O'Neill, 81st overall. Scott, I thought this was a great value on him. You wind up with Max Muncy. That gives you 5 hitters and 2 pitchers through your first 7 picks. Joe Musgrove at SP 27 off the board, and then Dylan Cease at SP 28, the last pick of the 7th round. And I do think this is closer to where he's going to be drafted, Scott. I think there's going to be a lot of helium on Dylan Cease this year. And you have him at SP 39 in your rankings, the early ranks, and he goes SP 28 here. So, there's a little bit of a disparity there.
Yeah, there is. It kind of depends on how much you prioritize him among that group. Let's see who hasn't gone yet. Verlander doesn't go till round 11, and I have Verlander ahead of Cease, I think, pretty clearly, unless there's some kind of setback between now and then. Darvish hasn't gone yet. I would definitely take Darvish over Cease. But after that, it's kind of a cluster of 8 to 10 pitchers that I think you could move Cease to the top of. I have him near the bottom. But if you're going to see the glass half full, you're going to predict another big step forward for him next year, then I think it's not too much of a stretch to put him here. I think you did great taking Montas here late in round 7 as your number 2. I actually prefer him to Max Fried, who went early in round 6. So to get him almost 2 full rounds later, I think that makes up for some of your misses at the position earlier, and I think he's a perfectly fine number 2. Of course, I prefer him as my number 3, but you can't have everything. So I like the strikeout potential with the splitter, him emphasizing the splitter more than ever down the stretch last year, and we just saw his swinging strike rate, his strikeout totals. We just saw everything blow up for Frankie Montas, and I think it's a good pick. I'm not less sure about my Max Muncy pick. See, this felt like the end of a tier at first base specifically. I already had second base covered with Altuve, but Max Muncy here in round 7, I didn't want to have to, settle for a not so great first baseman. So I took Muncy here in round 7. I'm not sure we're going to get to it, so I'll go ahead and bring it up now. What in my mind was the steal of the draft was Joey Votto in round 13. I don't think there's a 6-round difference between Muncy and Votto. I understand you may not want to draft Votto's numbers at their face value because he's 37, and he appeared to be on decline before that. I think he made some changes that justify the big increase in power. I mean, that's what he talked about doing before the season. So I trust his process with that. But just given the age, can you really expect him to do that again? To approach his career high in home runs? I think it's fair to wonder, but when you get that kind of production in round 13, that's crazy to me. I feel like there should only be like a 2-round difference between him and Muncy, not a 6-round difference.
Yeah, I think most people probably just prefer Joey Votto as their corner infielder. It might just be like an optics thing where I don't know. You don't want to look at your team and see Joey Votto, I guess, starting at first base, but he was awesome. It's just a matter of how much you trust it, right? So, yeah, look, if
Yeah,
he's
I
going to go
mean,
that late,
and
then
like if you draft Joey Votto as a corner infielder, then who does that put as a starting first baseman in the
yeah,
league? Josh Bell? You know, there's
right.
only so many quality first basemen, top so many first basemen that are worth putting in the top 12.
Well, maybe Reese Hoskins could be one of them. I got him in round 12 as my starting first baseman, and I like
Yeah.
Reese Hoskins quite a bit. I mentioned that on our first base podcast. Let's run through the 8th round here and try to get through a few more, and then we'll take a look at our teams. Austin Meadows goes 85th overall. Chris Bryant then goes. Scott, you take Carlos Correa. You now have 6 hitters and 2 pitchers through 8 rounds, which is again is very different than we're used to. Carlos Rodon, SP29, goes 88th overall. I take you Darvish. It just doesn't feel great. I guess it's okay value. I was drafting using your rankings, Scott. So I mean, full transparency, but I just don't have my own rankings yet. So he was the 30th starting pitcher off the board. He's my SP3. It's fine. I don't love it. The very next pick, this actually broke my heart when I saw this. Jazz Chisholm went one pick after I took you Darvish, and I just love some Jazz Chisholm, man. Especially in Roto, 5x5, you don't have to worry about strikeouts. Although the strikeouts weren't really that bad this past year. I just love the power speed combination for him. And the rest of the 8th round, we saw Trent Grisham go, then Anthony Rendon, JD Martinez, Trevor Rogers, Jesse Winker, and Pablo Lopez. Any picks that stand out to you in this round, Scott? What do you think about Jazz Chisholm? Is this a fair range to get him in Roto, the 8th round?
To be honest, I don't love it.
Ah,
I don't love it. I wouldn't call it the biggest reach of this round. I prefer Jazz Chisholm to Austin Meadows and Trent Grisham, who also went in this round, and I think have bigger questions about whether or not they deserve to be considered high-end players. I mean, Jazz Chisholm at least is on the right trajectory, unlike Meadows and Grisham. But he's not there yet. I mean, comparing him to JD Martinez or Jesse Winker, even the pitchers who went here, Darvish, and I'll put Pablo Lopez in there. I just feel like they are they have proven to be difference makers already. Well, Jazz Chisholm, he's injured a lot. He kind of faded in the second half. You do like the power speed combo, dual eligibility. All of that's nice, but I just don't think he compares to most of the players going in this round yet in terms of how confident you can be in that he'll live up to the price tag.
all right, Scott. I mean, I played the sound effect and everything. You went and
I
poo-pooed my
know.
guy, Jazz Chisholm. How dare you?
I'm sorry.
The 9th round starts with Brian Reynolds. He went to our buddy Chris Clegg. He said he liked him when we did the outfield podcast, so sticking to his guns there. Clayton Kershaw as the SP33 off the board. It sounds like I think there's still a chance he winds up back with the Dodgers, but the Texas Rangers are making some noise. Clayton Kershaw is from the Dallas area, so we'll see if that actually happens. Yohan Moncada, 99th overall. Shane McClanahan, pick 100. He was the SP34. Then we see Michael Conforto, Giancarlo Stanton, Marcus Stroman as the SP35, and then I take Justin Verlander, Scotty.
Great pick, Frank.
Thank you, sir. I get him as
my
the
heart.
SP36. He's my 4th starting pitcher. He joined Sandy Alcantara, Frankie Montas, Yu Darvish, and Justin Verlander. What I will say about this group of starting pitchers, huge upside, very low floor. I mean, the variance that you get with these starting pitchers, I feel pretty safe about Sandy Alcantara, but like, who is Frankie Montas and Yu Darvish at this point? And Verlander's coming back from Tommy John at age like 38. So it's I don't know. I don't really know what to expect from this group, but it's an interesting group.
I mean, Verlander's a generational pitcher, first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the few pitchers ever to win an MVP award. And in his last healthy season, he struck out 300 guys. So I really think he's going to be fine. I do. And
I lean that way too.
I I would have been thrilled to get him as my number 3 here in round 9. I was very this was the most disappointing moment of the draft for me. You taking him 2 picks before me.
Ha ha.
Because
That's
he's
what
not
you
gonna.
get.
I don't think he's gonna go in round 9. By the time we get to March, basically after we see that first, second spring training start, everybody's gonna be like, "Yeah, Justin Verlander, he's a pretty big deal." And we'll probably see him rise up to round, I don't know, 5, round 4, maybe.
Sheesh.
I
Scott, if
think
that's
so.
the case, look, if you've got some money laying around anywhere, just go hop in an NFBC draft now because Justin Verlander's ADP is 172.2.
Oh my gosh.
I got him at pick 104. Think about that. Everything that you
Mm.
just said. We're getting Verlander right now in like crazy discount. Just like a lot of people don't know what to expect. He's going to be 18 months removed from Tommy John surgery. It's not like he had Tommy John at the beginning of this season. 18 months is a long time. And it already reports that he's throwing 97 miles per hour. I don't know. Maybe we're looking glass half full, Scott, but I'm with you. I think Verlander is going to be a great discount. So.
And I don't think he's gonna get his usual workload because obviously that contributes to the 300 strikeouts. Yeah, coming back for Tommy John surgery. I don't. How many times has a pitcher even gone 180? I think Matt Harvey holds the record for most innings off of Tommy John surgery, and well, that was a good season for him. He was kind of broken after that. But Justin Verlander being 38 next year, I mean, what is he holding back for? Like,
Yeah.
I kind of have a feeling he could. I'm not going to predict it, but I think it's possible he could break that Matt Harvey record that's mostly maligned.
Rounding out this 9th round, we see Lance McCullers. Then, Scott, you take Jorge Polanco. You now have 7 hitters and just 2 starting pitchers through round 9. So I did think it was a great pick, though. I was looking at Polanco myself. And then Shane Baz as the SP 38 and Tyler Mahle as the SP 39. So that is the end of round 9. Let's quickly run through round 10. And
By the
then
way, I feel like there's a clear drop off here at starting pitcher, right? Baz and Mahle. After we saw Verlander, McCullers, Kershaw in this round is kind of surprising, understandable given the concerns over the health. But yeah, I think there's a drop off here that maybe deserves more separation in the draft than actually happened.
the 10th round starts with 2 Seattle Mariners outfielders, Mitch Haniger, which seems like a pretty good value at 109, Jared Kelenic at 110. Scotty, you take Kyle Schwarber, so you were talking him up on our outfield podcast, so sticking with it there. Jonathan India, this 5x5 roto, getting him in the 10th round, some power, some speed. Seems like a really good value to me. Raisel Iglesias, I took him. He's the 3rd closer off the board, and 5 rounds separated from the 2nd to the 3rd closer. So Liam Hendricks. Oh gosh, I just got my Hendricks all messed up there. Liam Hendricks and Josh Hader go in the 5th round. Raisel Iglesias goes in the 10th round. So I'm a big Raisel Iglesias fan. He's a free agent. We'll see where he winds up, but I do think wherever he goes, he'll be the closer. Alex Verdugo next up. Then we see Joey Gallo, DJ LeMahieu, CJ Crone, Jake Cronenworth, Aroldis Chapman, the 4th closer off the board, and then Zach Gallen here as the 40th starting pitcher off the board. And that's the end of 10 rounds, Scotty.
Maybe this is the appropriate place to cut off for the podcast in terms of going round by round, because this is where things really start getting wonky. I mean,
Yeah.
DJ LeMahieu and Joey Gallo going in round 10 here after the years they just had. Really don't see it. And, the rounds to come, there are some oddball picks like that. Some, raising the eyebrow even more than that. But, there is also kind of a natural drop off here among hitters, I feel like. If Kyle Schwarber is everything I think he is, let's say Jonathan India takes a step forward from his rookie of the year winning rookie season. Let's say CJ Crone, he's able to repeat that production in a second year at Coors Field. Those might be the last hitters who will put up early round type numbers, barring the breakouts that, you can't predict with a ton of certainty. The guys you can reasonably expect that from. I feel like the cutoff is kind of here. So since it didn't come until round 10, that's why I kept passing up pitchers in favor of hitters. And, beginning, let's see, I take a hitter in round 11, I take a reliever in round 12. But yeah, then I really hit pitching hard from round 13 on, and that's how I'm able to get 7 of my top 55 at the position. Because I don't think at that point, the rankings, I don't think the hitters really compare, with the exception of like that Joey Votto in round 13 pick and a couple other guys who happened to slide, and I couldn't go after them because I had to go hard after pitching.
All right, Scott, you just mentioned you took your third starting pitcher in the 13th round. So let's talk about that. Let's take a look at your team overall. You can run through the offense, tell us maybe what you like, what you don't like, and then do the same thing for your pitchers.
Okay. Do you want me to name the names or just?
Sure. Or, I mean, I have it pulled up here on YouTube. I can name them if you want.
No, that's fine. So I ended up with my catching tandem of Dalton Varsho and Joey Bart. Varsho was my 11th round pick. I got Bart very late. My infield is Max Muncy, Jose Altuve, Austin Riley, Carlos Correa. My middle infield spot is Jorge Polanco. That's, pretty high end middle infielder, obviously. Corner infielder, Luke Voigt. I got him very late, but we know he has big potential if he winds up being the Yankees starting first baseman, which is very much in question. My outfield is Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts, Kyle Schwarber, Robbie Grossman, and Joe Adell. My DH is Frank Schwindel.
Oh,
If it wasn't, we kind of think he dropped too far, right? Where did he end up going? Schwindel went in round 20.
that's amazing.
Yeah, if he wasn't available there, I would have taken Yuli Gurriel. Yuli Gurriel, I think, was the best player who wasn't drafted in the 23 rounds. Won a batting title, obviously a deep lineup, but not a ton of power for his position, so you kind of understand that. All right, the pitching staff. This is what everybody wants to hear about. Robbie Ray, Charlie Morton. Those were the early picks. My third pitcher taken in round 13 was Ranger Suarez. And then Adam Wainwright is my number 4. Zach Greinke 5, Aaron Savale 6, Patrick Sandoval 7. And then I also happened to take Mike Soroka late. My only closer is Emmanuel Clase, who I took in round 12. I actually like him more than Raisel Iglesias. I actually have him ranked ahead of Iglesias, but I might end up with a lot of Clase if that's the case.
If that's the case, right? No. It's okay to be wrong, Scott. I mean, Raisel Iglesias is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, look, I need Robbie Ray and Charlie Morton to come through, right? There's a lot of risk in my next 5 pitchers: Ranger Suarez, Adam Wainwright, Zach Greinke, Aaron Savale, and Patrick Sandoval. A lot of risk, a lot of upside. And that's kind of why I want to go heavy on that middle tier at pitcher, and just hope that 2 or 3 of the 5 work out. I don't even need a 50% success rate. If 2 work out and my 2 early guys work out, I got a really solid 4 starting pitchers there that I think could take me far. And if more happen to work out, great. Hopefully I have a surplus. I would like a better number 3 than I ended up with. I would have loved to take Verlander, where you took him, Frank, in round 9, right?
Yep.
As my number 3. But I feel pretty good about how this turned out.
All right. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say about this pitching staff is I think if you had just a little bit better SP3 and 4, and then you kind of took some shots with these guys later on, like to get Savale in the 17th round, I actually think that's a really good value. Patrick Sandoval, we saw a pretty good amount of upside this past season. Is that something he can carry over returning from injury in 2022? And it remains a question mark, but that's why you get him as late as you do. So I like some of those guys that you got later on. I think you got to get a better, at least SP3, maybe SP4 as well. Ranger Suarez, you probably want as like your SP5 or later, in my opinion. But
I love Ranger Suarez, though.
Oh yeah, I know you're all over.
And look, if Adam Wainwright just keeps doing what he did in both 2021 and 2020, I'll point out.
Yeah,
he was a top 10 pitcher last year, regardless of format. And I don't rank him as that. I rank him as like 45 or whatever. But still, I think at the point I took him, you, you, that there's no risk at that point. I feel like I'm going to have a lot of Adam Wainwright just because nobody else wants Adam Wainwright, and that's going to make him a no risk sort of proposition.
All right, I'll run you through my my crappy team here. My catcher tandem is Mitch Garver and Travis d'Arnaud. Yuck. Reese Hoskins is my first baseman. I'm actually all right with that. Ketel Marte, Jose Ramirez, Bobby Witt is my starting shortstop, which we don't know if he's going to be on the opening day roster or not, but I got him in the 11th round.
Yep.
And so that would make him pick 128. His early NFBC ADP is 77.6. So that's very high. I don't think that I want to take him that high, but yeah, if I'm getting him outside the top 100 in a roto league, then yeah, I think he has a pretty awesome upside.
But between Verlander and Witt, I feel like you got the two players with the most potential to see their value skyrocket in spring training.
Yeah,
those are the two. By the way, for what it's worth, Kelnick went in round 10, Witt in round 11. So at least in this draft, Kelnick went first.
I had the Welsh like ringing in my head. Once I saw Kelnick go off the board, I'm like, all right, I'm taking Bobby Witt with my next pick. Brandon Crawford is my middle infielder. I don't really know what to expect from him, but I got him super late. Josh Donaldson's my corner infielder. Blah, whatever. My outfielders are Luis Robert. I got Teoscar Hernandez. I got Byron Buxton. And then I got Eddie Rosario pretty late. I think I'm okay with him as like my fourth outfielder. If he can stay healthy this year. He's been awesome every other year that he's been healthy. I got Ramon Laureano as my fifth outfielder. He's going to miss the first 27 games because of a suspension next season. So keep that in mind. He was like the only name that I recognized later in the draft. So I took Ramon Laureano. I got Nelson Cruz as my utility bat, and I got him in like the 13th round.
Yep, Nelson Cruz, always there for you. Yeah, I do think after he was traded from the Twins to the Rays, he showed maybe some signs of decline. I mean, the production wasn't that good with the Rays. The underlying numbers were still pretty similar to what he did previously. I think he struck out more, but in terms of hitting the ball hard and everything, maybe the decline is overstated, but I am a little more leery of Nelson Cruz than I have been the past few years.
I agree with all that. I think he was probably a 7th or 8th round pick last year. So you're getting a 5 or 6 round discount.
Oh, definitely great where you took him.
Definitely. Yeah, he's turning 42 years old. Like anything can happen, but
yeah,
we have to see if he's even coming back to play baseball. We don't even know. The pitchers that I wind up with were Sandy Alcantara. I got Frankie Montas as my SP2. I got Yu Darvish. I got Justin Verlander, so that's my top 4. And then I get Logan Gilbert as my SP5 and Eduardo Rodriguez. He was one of my last picks as my SP6. And then I got Raisel Iglesias, Camilo Doval, and Dylan Floro as my relief pitchers. We don't know for sure that Doval is going to be the closer for the Giants, but I think so. He looks awesome down the stretch, and he was filling that role for a team that was competing for a World Series. So
right into the postseason, yeah. Even with McGee healthy again.
So what do you think, Scott, of my team overall? It's kind of a weird team. I think I should have passed on taking both Darvish and Verlander where I did. I think just taking one of them would have been fine, and then maybe getting another solid hitter, maybe at like shortstop or
I don't know. I mean, I definitely like your pitching better than my pitching.
Yeah,
there are certainly ways it could go wrong. Maybe Darvish is just toast at this point. It's possible, but I doubt it. I don't know. I think it looks pretty good, Frank. I don't think it's a bad team. I like my hitting more than your hitting. Understandably, I've invested a lot in it, but I like your pitching more than my pitching. Maybe you're a little light on power, and that's what I don't want to be light on in my hitting core is power. I want to out homer everybody. That's my new goal with hitting in 5x5 leagues. I suppose it should have always been the goal, but I feel like this year taught me that you could never have too much power.
All right, Slugger Scott going for the home runs here in 2022. We are going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again on Thursday with Greg Jewett here to recap the relief pitcher position and take a look ahead to Scott's 2022 ranks. We'll do it here on Thursday. Bye-bye.